Hi, welcome. We are group 7. There's Cal, Chad, Caitlin, and Scott. I am Caitlin, and we are doing unit testing for software development. Next slide. So the first testing step of SDLC is unit testing, and it isolates the specific unit of functionality, validates correctness, and verifies it's free of bugs. Next slide. The purpose of unit testing is to validate code, reduce costs, identify bugs, and save time. Next slide.
There are three main types. I'm Cal, and I'll be talking about the types of unit testing and then tools of unit testing. So there are three main types of unit testing: black box testing, white box testing, and gray box testing. Black box testing is done only based on the inputs and outputs of the software. In other words, it is done without knowledge or consideration of the code structure or implementation. The tests performed are mainly based on the requirements outlined by the customer. This type of testing only tests functional requirements, not non-functional requirements. White box testing is performed with advanced knowledge of the software's internal functionalities, implementation, and code structure, and because of this is often performed by the developer. Rather than testing functional requirements, non-functional requirements such as software security and structural integrity are tested. This type of testing is useful to reveal flaws not related to the input-output, such as poorly structured code or internal security holes. Gray box testing is a combination of white and black box testing, done with knowledge of the code structure, but not specific implementation. This type of testing is useful for revealing deviations from requirements or proper code structure or use of software. Because of the broader scope of this type of testing, there is an increased test coverage compared to black and white box testing. While there are obviously many more tools used for unit testing in the industry, I've listed 7 commonly used ones here. JUnit and TestNG are both testing frameworks used for Java programs. NUnit, SimpleTest, Jasmine, and MBUnit are testing frameworks for .NET or Mono framework programs, PHP programs, JavaScript programs, and C or C++ programs respectively. HTML unit is unique in that it is a headless browser, but given the high level of control it gives the user over web pages, it is used in web testing.
Hi, my name is Chad. I'm going to be talking about the process of unit testing. As you can see, it's the first step in the testing. So the process of unit testing is to test each module or unit of code independently, and this is done to validate the code and its functionality. Quote, this testing is traditionally organized and executed by developers themselves in the development environment before merging the code with other existing functional modules of code. Unit testing is an important part of testing strategies that can reduce the cost of finding bugs later in your code. Next slide. So there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages. Advantages are that it decreases the amount of bugs, helps not prevent getting bugs later in your code. Make sure that you meet specifications, reduce costs, and disadvantages would be that it's not great for UI testing. It requires more code, and sometimes people get carried away and start writing tests that aren't scoped for the intended use of the code. So a good quote to kind of find the middle ground is as well, there are strong opponents on both sides of the UT issue. The middle ground says to use it with reason. That's all.
Hi, my name is Scott. I'll be talking about best practices. There are many different lists of best practices from different authoritative sources, and when they're merged into one master list, many common themes appear. Keep it simple, keep it fast, keep it isolated, keep it focused. The test is not supposed to duplicate the code or perform logic, but to verify consistent outcome by testing in a way other than the way that the code first produced the result. Also, an important part of isolation is not using any outside interfaces, libraries, or APIs in the test. All of those should be mocked up or simulated. Next slide, please. Some other important aspects of best practices are naming conventions, readability, and keeping unit tests as an integral part of the entire development process rather than as a separate phase. Next slide, please. Best practices also require that tests are not coupled to code and that they are self-reporting and checking. They should use parameterized testing, and they should only validate private methods indirectly by testing their public interfaces. Next slide, please. I've got a Python example test here, and next slide, please. And I've got a couple of other ones from DigitalOcean that are displaying some things. And now, next slide, please. I'm going to go through the references real quick and just show our questions. Next slide, please. Yep. And that's it for us. Thanks, guys.